Hey guys, this is Callan LF with my first episode of a new attempt at mock advice with Callan, or Callan's mock advice, or whatever. I'm just gonna try something new here because, as you all know, here I used to do mock talks, and that started on July 4th of last year, and I did that for a couple months, and I actually really enjoyed it. The problem was I actually ended up running out of mocks, basically, and then also I went back to college, and it was a lot harder to do the setup there. So it was a mix of that, and now that I'm back for home for a while as a working man, I've been having a hard time getting back into the groove of making videos. So I wanted to try doing something a little different with this second channel and try maybe getting back to more daily kind of content with potentially a new attempt at a mock advice kind of show. Back in the day, I did this with Kasi, and we just reviewed mocks basically, and I attempted doing that on Callan's Daily Mock Reviews a while back, but I don't know, my heart really wasn't in it. Um, so I wanted to kind of actually attempt doing mock advice and actually talk about advice that you guys can have for building your own things. And so here I thought I would start with just talking about some different joint techniques, especially with smaller figures. You can really take advantage of different kinds of joints that you can use to make your figures posable. I might do something like this with a similar topic for how you can implement it on bigger figures, but here I just want to talk about smaller ones. So here, let's start with Onipex, who is a really solid idea. I mean, technically the Slicer body was established and isn't an original thing by IDS 5621, but as far as I can recall, he's one of the first to really implement the fact of using a lightsaber rod to increase leg mobility, and he's also used the joints of the and made taken advantage of Metru arms as legs, which don't form an actual knee, but still provide a good articulation to give this shorter character a lot of character and personality with the way he can move. So yeah, he really takes advantage of pieces that aren't other than the slicer body, which is common in a solid way of building competent Matoran mocks. He actually uses limbs that are harder to make work with standard figures, as the Bohrok limb is the easiest to make a solid figure with overall. So using lightsaber rods is a good way of doing connections. I'm going to toot my own horn here a little bit with some of these, so I apologize. There are some interesting things you can do. This is just I often do the lazy, just use a bone for the leg, and that's just a thing I end up doing. It's lazy. But you can also try and do things with the Bohrok limb. Speaking of how useful it is, it's an amazing piece. But you don't always just have to use it as a limb. My brother David actually technically came up with this as far as implementing it on a larger figure, and I shrunk it down for a smaller character in order to make an arm connection that you still get quite a bit of mobility. The arms can't go out as wide, but for such a burly character, it really all depends on what kind of. With smaller characters, you're almost always going to have more limited mobility than with bigger characters. So getting the right parts of articulation can help, especially if you do stop motion animation. It can help convey good character apart with the parts that you can move. For example, Callan here, he can't really move his hands to the side around as much, but he does have fingers, so you move those a little bit, and of course those are attached by stick pieces. Standard connection for and yeah, Callan himself has a lot of ball joint connections, but his leg is on a pin connection, and even though it's not a proper knee, it's a bit high. You can still get some good mobility out of that, and I think that's something to keep in mind, especially with a smaller figure. You're not always going to get a really nice, perfect elbow or something like this with that you can accomplish with that. You can take it, but you can still get more mobility, even if it doesn't look 100% great. You can still get it with by just moving the legs, putting it wherever you can, designing the leg with some caveats in mind, because you're not always going to be able to build it exactly how you want. Speaking of pin connections, they're very handy in general for building with smaller characters. This is another way you can do a pin connection for mobility, and if you have more ball joints, that also helps a lot, because Larnu probably has one of the most dynamic arm mobility positions. I mean, his arms also cannot go out as much, but they can also do a lot. He's probably the most posable arm character as far as elbows go, and hands connected. He's got both elbows and wrists, which is kind of handy, and you can do a lot with that with character. And the fact that both the elbows and the wrists are on pin connections, the mobility is easier to do than with just a standard ball joint. In fact, it makes this ball joint a little less easy. I mean, a little less useful in its implementation, if that makes any sense. Whatever. I'm just gonna keep rolling right along. Again, pins can be a really helpful source of connection, and obviously you don't always have to use ball joints the exact same way. The socket, while is obviously the most important connection, you can have it connect and come from different areas. For example, in this case, the hands are on the torso, and the arms are actually made up of the piece. Also, this guy is fragile because he sucks. This is not a particularly great figure before demonstrating this, but there's still a little bit of character you can get of it. He's got good head mobility, and I was mostly bringing him to show that he has legs that are completely completely connected by pins. So take that for what you will. I wouldn't recommend building a lot of mocks like that, but hey, if that's the kind of size you're going for, it's decent on a very small scale like him. This guy is particularly interesting because you can use system bits to increase posability. His shoulder connection is very kind of bizarre. I hope you can see that. I'm going to adjust the focus here. Yeah, you can see now that he uses a kind of technique system, and when you're working on the small scale, you can really kind of get away with that. And so really, he's probably, again, lots of shoulder mobility, also a little bit limited by his shoulder pieces, but because of how many connections are here, he can still go out wider than both Larnu and the Ganon Mach. So I like that. Unfortunately, because it's a looser stud connection, if you do have something in the hand, it's not gonna hold as much weight. So keep that in mind when designing with Lego smaller connections. Oh yeah, I better adjust the focus again. Whoop, whoop. Also, yeah, and also keep in mind that you can also don't forget those ever useful Hordikiniks. Working your body, you can use Hordikiniks to get interesting leg connections. Even though the leg itself is very boring, the connection for our ball socket is there. And who knows, maybe I could potentially fix that in the future. Finally, I'm going to talk about this guy a little, because you can also take advantage of pre-existing parts. What I attempted to do here was try and get the look of a Marimatorin, but take advantage of the fact that Lego created the smaller torso piece with the XT4 set, and they used it a lot with the smaller Bionicle 2015 characters, the Protectors. And you really can take advantage of that and use it, even though the arm connection is completely added and built upon. Up here, those two ball joints are being used, and neither is this one. The smaller connected legs at the bottom make a nice foundation, and I was able to build a torso around up here, and that's nice and handy. And it's just, I also just kind of like it as an interesting reverse of a lot of times. For example, with Callan, it's easier to use these pieces as arms for smaller figures, but in this case I was able to get nice small legs and use the standard Bohrok limbs as arms. So yeah, hopefully this was a bit helpful. These are always going to have to be under 10 minutes because I don't like to do editing, and my camera always shuts off at 10 minutes. It's just the wonderful technology I'm working with. But I hope you really enjoyed this video. I'm going to try and do these hopefully at least once a week, maybe every few days if I can. I just really wanted to get back in the mindset, because right now I've been working a job that's not really soul-sucking, but just, you know, takes a lot of my time, and I'm starting to get a little disillusioned. So, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Throw suggestions, please comment. Thanks. Love you. Bye.